Hello and welcome to Single Track. How are you doing, Matthias?
I am doing fantastic. The sun is shining.
It is shining. I am back in the Pacific Northwest right now. I am back from Montana, so
You
I
literally
landed.
flew in this morning, right?
Yeah. I've been up since 4. I caught a 7 a.m. flight, and I landed at 8 a.m. at SeaTac, like right as the sun was coming up. Mountains were out, snow was there. It was great. So I got to see the most beautiful territory of all time before I landed. So it was awesome. I'm a little tired, so I may be rambly or repeaty, but for our listeners right now, what else is new, right?
I was just going to say, why are you explaining it now? We know you, Doug. But because of the rambliness, I brought somebody else on the podcast today because, as you listeners know, I'm looking for a new co-host. Just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding. So we've got a guest on this show, and we're super excited about this. Mike, introduce yourself to our listeners.
My name's Mike Ehredt, and I live in Hope, Idaho, and currently sneaking up on 60, but hey, I'm still young at 58.
I love it.
Nice. And Hope, we were talking about this off mic, but where is Hope, Idaho? I've talked a little bit about Idaho on the podcast, but not that much. So for those people that are that may sound familiar, but where is that?
So we're up in the northern panhandle of Idaho, right where it gets real narrow if you were looking at a map. Maybe 35 miles from the border of Canada and on the east side of Lake Pend Oreille, maybe 15 miles from Sandpoint, Idaho, if some have heard of it, or 2 hours from Spokane. Population, 75.
Nice. So, how long did it take you to get to know everybody in town, or for them to get to know you?
Oh, that was about 3 days. Down at the cafe at the marina. Yeah. A gal said, "Well, I know you're not local because you got all your teeth," and went from there.
Oh, that's great. That's a good Idaho introduction right there.
So in a funny coincidence, last summer I was on a business trip in Pend Oreille, and I made a point of waking up one early morning. We stayed for a couple nights, and I ran across the border, across the river, to hit Idaho so I can say that I've ran in Idaho, and then I turned around. So that's how close I've ever made it to be anywhere near that far away from civilization and everything else.
Yeah.
So, but we don't have you on here because you're an expert on Idaho. We have you on because you've got a really cool running history. And you mentioned your age, but more so than your age, it's your history with running. That's the exciting part. You've ran some really, really cool stuff. Tell us a little bit about how you've gotten into running, because you didn't start off as being a runner. You're not one of those runners who ran in high school, ran in college, and just kept running all along, right?
No, it was like hit and miss. I do have very young memories of it, and yeah, I was one of those guys in high school. But I had a long break from running. I think in those 20s when a lot of people have a break from everything. So I was having a lot of fun doing other stuff. But the running, I always kind of went back to it, for one, because it was a cheap sport to do. It kept me healthy.
Yes,
and many times it gave me a good excuse to at least sit down and have a beer afterwards. But yeah, running, my earliest memories were at about the age of 5, actually, because I was born with what do they call tibial rotation, osteo, something I can't even pronounce. Basically, I was like a club foot in both legs, and really severely knock-kneed. And so I had trouble walking. I would go to run and then I would fall, go to run and then fall. And but I had an operation when I was like 5, and they fused my ankles, pulled my knees out, put me in some Forrest Gump braces. And as soon as the braces came off, I was like, okay, hey, I want to go. I want to play with all my friends. I want to play. And it didn't quite happen that well.
You had some catching up to do, though.
I had some catching up because I took about 4 steps and fell.
Right.
And so my earliest memories of running were, falling and getting up. And, but I never let that kind of like hinder me from doing things I like to do. But, as I went on in life, and geez, there's like so many stories. I don't even know where to start with you guys.
Well, we have a good structure. I don't mean to step on your stories. We have some questions that we probably will allow you to expand more on your running history and kind of just why you're such an inspiration, not just because of why you started running, early on, but because of what you've done. But a good way to kind of get this going, that I am curious about is, where did you last run? What was the last run you did?
As in like last week or this week?
Or this? Yeah.
Well, guys, it was like 10 years ago. Come on. No,
riding that fame, right?
Yeah. Actually, the last run was yesterday.
All right.
And it was on snowshoes. Actually, there's a warming hut that is about 14 miles way back in the sticks on a place called Moose Lake. And it has a stove and facilities inside, and it's not used a whole lot by people on feet, more by people on machines. But snowshoed into there, pulling a sled behind me, because I wanted to see what that felt like. And we don't have to do that again for a while. But actually, I ran into the hut and spent the night, and then ran out yesterday morning.
Oh, that's fantastic! I've been looking into the snowshoe running more and more, because it's a good way to get out in the winter. And I'm curious how the pulling of the sled was. It sounds like it wasn't ideal. Is that true?
It's not bad. It's like, I put the sled together. It cost me like $50, a kid's sled and some PVC tubing, and you're constantly tweaking it. And, the rope breaks, and then you're duct taping it back together. So as far as pulling it was okay. But, there's just these little minor irritations, breakdowns. But, I was toying with the idea of doing this event in Minnesota, this Arrowhead 135 next year. And, that is probably temporarily on hold. I might have to invest a few $100 and, get a sled that I'm not going to have to worry about breaking. But, it's a hell of a lot easier than carrying a pack on your back and snowshoeing. It's great exercise. I love breaking up things in the winter, other than just, I ran through the summer, run through the fall, run through the winter. No, I love snowshoeing in the winter, because sometimes I think we can get a little jaded, we love seeing the beautiful trails and being on dirt and getting these beautiful views, but we often neglect going out to see them in the wintertime because, oh, hell, it's too cold or there's too much snow. It's like, no, man, it's a whole new aspect for you. And that's what I do that. Yeah.
So,
how about you, Matthias?
So my question then is, before I have one more follow-up question. You asked about the sleigh. I'm interested in asking about the snowshoes. What snowshoes do you use for running?
I use the Atlas, what they call Atlas Race. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit narrower. It goes in everything I want to go in. And then I wear a La Sportiva CrossFit shoe, not CrossFit as in the gym, but that's just the name of it. And it's basically, it looks like a Nordic ski boot. It's a trail shoe with an enclosed upper that zips up and with an integrated gaiter. So it's like completely waterproof. You wear that with the shoes, and the snowshoes weigh less than 2 pounds.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
So,
I love hearing you're wearing La Sportiva shoes. Those are my absolute favorite shoes. So I love hearing whenever people are running them. So, Doug, you asked me what my last run was.
Yes.
I slogged out 10 miles yesterday throughout the day, and just before it started raining, so I was lucky, and I just ran through town because my previous runs, they were all without snowshoes on enough packed down snow that it didn't really make sense to take crampons or micro spikes. It certainly didn't make sense to wear snowshoes because it was this kind of leftover snow that we have around here where half the trail is on snow and half the trail is on dirt. But it was so exhausting that yesterday I basically had a road run through the city, which was somewhat boring. I mean, certainly not as cool as pulling a sleigh to a hut and staying the night there, but I mean, I got it done. How about you, Doug?
I feel we teed this off completely wrong. Like, we should have answered first so we could have ended on a high note.
I know, right?
I ran from the house in Livingston, and I ran down by the Yellowstone River. This was on Tuesday. Ran along there. It was 5 degrees with about a 15-mile-an-hour wind, so it was cold. There's our weather report for this episode, but it was great. I needed one more good view. It was a sunny day, just endless snowy mountains, and the river's starting to freeze in town. So anytime I can see a frozen river, I'm going to run there. So once again, I ran my standard Livingston town run. So it was good.
Yeah. Do you guys ever experience like that seasonal disorder where if you don't see sun for a while, you get a little wacky?
So I do. I am lucky enough to be splitting my time between the Olympia area and just north of Yellowstone National Park. So I have plenty of sun in the winter to kind of give me that break, because otherwise, when I'm here and I'm only in the clouds, I start to get I don't know if it's cabin fever as much as just that, like, I need to see the sky. It would be nice to see the moon at night sometime, like just little things like that. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm originally from Germany, so I'm not native to the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of people that have lived here for a lot longer than me, they often say that it gets dreary for so long that they start to get really funked out by it. And I don't know if it's climate change, or I feel like the last couple winters or so, we've gotten some good breaks where there have been a few weeks where it sort of starts to feel like the sky is caving in on you. But I mean, especially this winter, I feel like it's been like we've had now several days of snow, and then the sun pops out for a couple days and stuff. Like just before we got our big snow a couple weeks ago, we've had some beautiful sunny days where it was cold. It was clearly winter, but we were able to get some runs in our nearby Capitol Forest, which is a state-managed working forest, but big recreation area too. And I was able to get some, long runs in there, which we wouldn't otherwise. And, here in Western Washington, we don't get snow for several months that we really have to adjust how we run. We get a few days, like when we did get our snow, there was like no running. Everybody's Strava miles were non-existent for that 1 week, right?
So happy I almost won the Strava contest that week. It was great.
Yeah. It's interesting that well, I knew you're from Germany because I listened to these other podcasts, and I was like, I got to thinking about it. That was actually, Germany was where I was introduced to trail running, per se, because I was in the military there back in the 79 to 83.
Yeah.
But and my first marathon I ever did was in Athens, Greece, but I was stationed near Fulda and spent two years in Garmisch-Partenkirchen.
Okay, of course.
So I would do a ton of Volksmarches. That was my training, to march and run these loops that they had. Sometimes do it twice, and then have beer and brat afterwards.
Of course.
I thought, how good is this? I'm in a country where they give me beer and I get to run trails. And I thought it was the greatest thing.
I know. I remember as a teenager with a couple friends of ours, we often went into the Alps, and we called it hiking when we went uphill. But as soon as the downhill as soon as we were heading home, we only ran. I mean, we didn't run. We didn't have trail running shoes. We had hiking boots. But we always ran the downhill. So yeah, I've sort of reintroduced myself to trail running a few years ago when it became a thing. And I sort of remember, it's like, yeah, I think whenever I was in the mountains, I never just walked. There was always sort of an additional spring in my step.
Well, that's even the first hike that you and I took together. You ended up running down like almost every hike we've gone on that wasn't a run, you've ran at some point. And I don't know if it's whether to get away from me or, if it's just habit at this point. But yeah, you've always ran. So.
Well, I think I was so exhausted from walking that I was like, running is my only option downhill. I need to let gravity do the work for me. That was the main early goal.
Yeah.
So let's jump into a little bit of some of the stuff that you've done, Mike, because you've got a fairly impressive resume in kind of the races you've ran and the kind of the routes that you've run. Tell us a little bit about how you got into trail running, right? Where you've taken sort of that step from, okay, I'm doing it for exercise around town to I'm interested in running 100 miles and further.
I when I took that little break from running, it actually started back in the early 90s, and I broke away for 15 years because I felt I was had become one-dimensional kind of with my life. Life revolved around work and running around in circles on a track and trying to set PRs at 5Ks and 10Ks, and I thought, this isn't for me. And so I just stepped back and did other things. Mountain bike racing and cycling and adventure racing. And it was it was actually 1998, and I was living in the Midwest. Was on the tail end of an adventure racing escapade with the eco challenges and the primal quests that were going on at that time. And I thought there was a 50-mile race in Kettle Moraine. I thought, well, 50 miles. Well, I do these 3 or 4 day expedition races, and my ego was huge. And I thought, 50 miles, but I ate that for lunch, And so I was like, okay, I wonder if I could do it like on 2 days a week training. I walk every day on my mail route, so that's 7 miles a day. And if I run, a 10 miler and then on the weekend do 20, I bet I could do 50. That minimalist approach.
Right.
And so I go up and I do that 50 miler, the Ice Age 50, 1998. And, literally got punched in the face. Mm-hmm. But I finished, and it was good. And my 2 brothers were there, and they're big Harley riding guys. Okay. They're like 6'4", 280. And then there's me. And, 5'10", 160. And every time I would see them, they were my crew. They had a PBR in their hand. And they're like, keep trucking, little brother. You're doing awesome. You're making us proud. Make us big boys proud. And then I remember in the last 10 miles of that first 50 miler, I came back from a loop, and my brother gave me a bottle. And then he just kind of looked at me and he goes, oh, man, what the hell happened to you from the last time we saw you to now? I mean,
oh, wow.
Shit.
Yeah.
But, I got to the finish line, and I could see them on the other side standing there with their PBRs raised, and they're like, yeah, there's our boy. There's our little brother. Yeah, come on, buddy, do it. And they were more happy about the buckle than I was. I just want to sit down. They're like, wait a minute. You did all that for a buckle? Yeah, I'm like, well, yeah.
Come on, as Harley guys, the buckle, they should get the buckle, right?
I'm like, I said, look at yours, and now look, we can ride motorcycles together. You don't have one. Well, I'll ride with you guys. No, you won't.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But, then that was my introduction back in the trail running in 98. And I was fortunate to move with the post office numerous times in transfers. And so I headed west to the Boulder area and eventually settled in Crested Butte, where I was introduced to an amazing individual, Kirk Apt. He's like the Jedi of ultra trail running, at least in the Hard Rock 100 circles. Kurt's now finished, I believe, 24 of them. I'm like, I can't wrap my head around it. That's like 2,400 miles in the San Juans. But the most humble and helpful and intelligent man, and he introduced me to trail running in Colorado, and that distance that seemed insurmountable. That I certainly believe if anyone wanted to, anyone could go that far. So I was lucky to be in Crested Butte and to run with that crowd and be into the Hard Rock Circle. And this summer I'll be going for number 5 for myself.
Fantastic.
And so I'm psyched about that. I always had wanted to get 5 for whatever reason. I thought it was a cool number, but it kind of puts you in an exclusive group of veterans. I think there's only about 80 guys who have done it at least 5 times. Over the last 20-some years. So I'm sorry. And it's a favorite of mine. If I had one day left on earth, it would be in the San Juans for sure.
That's fascinating to hear from me. From my trail running approach is obviously, I grew up in the Alps. So for me, my dream race would be UTMB around Mont Blanc. And so I always look at Hard Rock and it feels too much, a step too far. It feels too remote, too hard, too high up. Tell us a little bit about how running, moving, crawling in the San Juan is, because I've never been there, and I think most of our listeners know of Hard Rock as a race, right? And you sort of the numbers, but you can't really fathom what it actually means to run a race in that kind of environment with that much elevation change. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's very imposing for sure. I mean, when you drive in over from Ouray, over Red Mountain Pass into Silverton, and you just see these towering walls, and you look at those and you just go, "There's no freaking way."
Yeah.
And you're actually driving and you're getting these headaches because you're at, you're at 9,000 feet. But the thing I always was able to wrap my head around was realizing I was at 9,000 and the highest I would have to go would be 14. Okay. That's a 5,000 foot difference. And if you take North Idaho where I live, we certainly are not that high, but our vertical per mile, is the same, if not greater than Hard Rock.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, look, I got this vertical training at home. I can do these long climbs. I may not be high. I think the mistake most people make is, they get out there right away, especially first timers or, sometimes just visiting. We get out there and that first day we're there, we're like, okay, let's go. Let's go do 10, 15 miles, whatever. And it just kicks us in the teeth. And then you end up, being sick for a couple days. Whereas if you just kind of ease into it, I always went to Hard Rock for like 3 weeks prior to the race.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Exactly.
I always felt like my gas tank was about 3/4 full by the time the race came around, and versus, you hear different schools of thought going the day before, and I've done that, and it wasn't pretty. Mm-hmm. But, not everybody has that luxury to go out 2-3 weeks ahead of time. But as far as the climbs, they're majestic, they're long, they're beautiful. There's mountains for as far as you can see. It's just, I would imagine maybe what it's like, up in the North Cascades. But the altitude is certainly, you certainly feel it for sure. Yeah. And some people can handle it. It's just like you're being smothered. Mm-hmm. Your heart rate skyrockets. It's hard to digest food, certainly, because blood is being diverted to the major muscles in your legs, as you're moving. And, it's and some people mentally, it's just hard for them. They feel a slight little bit of discomfort and then the game's over.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was curious about with everything you've ran, the insane environment. I mean, insane positively here, but the insane environments that you've been able to run in for huge distances. What are some of those challenges of mentally that you have faced while endurance running, and like, what do you draw on for positivity, and how do you not get in a negative cave? Like, because I know for me, it's exactly as you're mentioning, that strikes a chord for me, is when I start getting discomfort, then I start thinking of like, well, can I really do this? Is this something that my body, and I get spiraling, and it kind of shuts me down on some runs. And I'm wondering, have you experienced that, and what do you do for positivity?
Oh, certainly I can experience, honestly, Doug, I can experience it like today. Like now I'm going, hell, do I really want to go out today or, tomorrow? But in those situations, we can't replicate the degree of difficulty that we'll face in some of those things. At least I couldn't. So I went in like with no expectations of conquering it, but just going with it and realizing that things change by the minute. Mm-hmm. Just as in anything else. And I would always stay positive. When we did a run a couple years ago, we were at the time there had only been 4 people had done it. We were the second group of 5 when we went around the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, circumnavigating the base. And it was 5 days and 160 miles. And I remember the first day, it was like this Indiana Jones crap. Up and down and up and down, and everything is thick and green, and it's sweltering hot and it's humid, and I'm just getting my butt kicked, and I'm like, okay, dude, you got like 5 days of this. Like, well, and then the little guy on the other shoulder says, yeah, and you paid for it too. But it's like, in the big scheme of things, I always looked at, look where you're at. Your legs brought you here. And in a blink of an eye, this is going to be over. And the reward of having it over and feeling good about it far outweighs that reward of it sitting on your shoulder for the rest of your life going, you know what, you didn't suck it up that day. So I never let negativity kind of creep in. I always like to say that there's like this room, and if you open the door of doubt to that room, you are never going to get it shut again. Never.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of cliche-ish, and, we can read all this stuff about what we should say and what we shouldn't, but I'm just like, you know what? You just don't go there.
Yeah.
Because you're going to wake up tomorrow. You're going to go to bed tonight. So as bad as it is in this race or this run, it'll pass.
Well, yeah. And I think that appreciation that you have for what you're doing in the moment of knowing, like, look at where I am. It's one of those, by being able to run long distances, you can go to some incredible places. That's why we started running, was just to turn our long day hikes into shorter runs, time wise, so we could be home by dinner or grab a beer on the way home. It made our days more fun. And again, like I said, I somewhat struggle with that too. And so it's always reassuring. And I know some of our listeners, it's always reassuring to know, like, everybody struggles at times, and you do have to remember, like, we're doing fun things that we love doing at the end of the day. And I mean, to circumnavigate Kilimanjaro must have been an incredible experience.
Yeah, that was, I remember there was a point where, I was kind of bitching to myself about not having enough water. I'm like, man, I hope, because we would go unsupported all day, and we had some Tanzanian runners with us. And, they're like wearing these old shoes and long pants, and they're carrying like these old, like 1990 Camelbacks, maybe, and here we are with our UD vest and our Solomon vest and our compression shorts and our calf. I mean, we're just like all decked out. And and I remember everybody in our group was moaning about, man, I hope we see the truck. We got to get some more water and this and that. And then we went through a village in what they call no man's land. It was the border of Kenya. And there were all these people gathered around there, like, getting water. and these two girls were walking, and they got their big, 5-gallon water things over their shoulders. They're walking, and when I said to one of the Tanzanian guys, "Hey, ask them how far they're going," and they were going like 6 miles. So they came to this one water spot to get their water, or walking home, and here my little ass is whining because I don't have enough in my 16-ounce soft shell. And so it's like a slap in the face going, "Oh, all right." Made me feel like rather small and inadequate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It brings you back to the reality of the struggles of the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were circumnavigating Mount Kilimanjaro, were you tempted to climb it too?
That's interesting. I had no desire to go up there.
Oh, interesting.
In hindsight, sure, if I'd had the financial means at the time, one of the gals in our group, she was from Sandpoint here. She did the run, and then she had signed on for a trip, and she went and she summited. And yeah, if I had the financial means, maybe at the time I probably would have, but I was all about just going to experience the culture and going around it and looking up at it and go, okay, it was there. It was in 2006, a friend and I did a run over in Nepal, and we did the Everest circuit, and then went back to Kathmandu, and then did the Annapurna circuit. We traveled super duper light and just ran as much as we could. And it reminded me of that because we're at a point of about, I think, 16,000 feet, a place called Gorak Shep or Gokiori or something, but we were looking like right at Everest.
Wow.
And it's there. Did I have any desire to ever go there, even if I had more money and I knew what to do it? Nah, probably not.
Right.
There's some things I draw a line at, and it was like looking at this beautiful piece of artwork, looking at Everest and looking at Kilimanjaro, and they were the two mountains that when I was in high school, my English teacher had asked me, you had to write a paper on what you want to do when you get older. What would your dream be? And mine said, I want to run around the base of Mount Everest. Well, it didn't quite work out, but I got close enough, and I remember that and just being able to see it. And it's just like admiring a Rembrandt or a Picasso in a museum, but I had no desire to steal it.
That's very interesting, right? Because Kilimanjaro is sort of a walk up, right? You don't really need a mountaineering skills in some regards, right? Where Everest is clearly something that requires, aside from a lot deeper pockets for a permit and potentially guide service and everything, right? It requires a completely different skill of physical activity and conditioning and stuff. You mentioned the base of Everest. Everest is a giant massif. How many miles was that circuit that you ran in the Himalayas?
That was when we did that circuit. It was kind of weird. Of course, at a young age, I had no idea of, if you could do such a thing. And then when I got older, I realized you couldn't because of, China and Tibet and so many other things. But you could literally go from our starting point up to base camp if you so desired. And then it was a clockwise loop, and then you could come back down another way to where you had started at. And that mileage there was like 120 miles, I believe.
Crazy.
And that took us like 9 days. Because we had gotten over there, even though we lived at 9,000 feet in Crested Butte. You're starting out like right at 10, and then we could only do the first couple of days, maybe a couple hours, and you're up at already up at 16, and you have to acclimate to get even higher. That one took about 9, and then back to Kathmandu, and then we started over on the Annapurna circuit, and I think that was about 10 miles more, so about 130 miles. And that one took, I think, 8 days. But it was great to just travel light, before kind of like we were just coming on the cusp of really fast packing super light, or maybe doing these, runs super light, of which, now we have the FKTs. And so we were able to go really light and just move fast and see a lot of.
And then you stayed overnight in huts of sorts.
Yes, we did.
Right?
And that was a great thing because it was so cheap,
Right,
it was like $6-7 a night. It ended up being a 6-week trip because that was the first leg of it. We did our runs, and then we went to Thailand and, hung out there for like 3.5 weeks. And the whole trip, I think we did for less than $2,000.
Wow.
And, when you look at, I had a friend the other day say, "Hey, how come you've never done an Ironman?" I said, "Well,
Yeah.
one, I wouldn't pay that entry. I'd rather go somewhere really cool." And so when I look at money spent on something like a Nepal trip or money on a Kilimanjaro, you can't put a price on that. And it easily trumps any medal on my wall or a buckle that I have. Just those types of experiences where you get to share it with the people of that area.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are great stories. Do you then take a lot of photos, or what do you bring back other than dusty trail shoes?
It's almost like I wish I could have fast forwarded to the technology that we have today.
Yeah, right.
It's like, geez, we had our phones, but you literally couldn't charge them. Maybe. We had to carry cameras and, put it on little cards and get it put on a DVD or a CD at the time. Whereas now, we can just send it right home same day.
Right.
Yeah.
But so a lot of stuff is just pictures on DVD sitting in a box.
I hear you. The stories that you're telling and the experience that you're having makes me brings up a question in me, I suppose, and that is, how do you pick your next adventure? What draws inspiration? If you wake up one morning, I mean, this year you have Hard Rock on your plate. Where are you going next?
Well, in May this year, I'll be going over to Wales to do a 5-day event called Dragon's Back. And Dragon's Back it's kind of has a Barkley type reputation in Europe.
Okay.
They've only had it, I think this will be the 5th time in the last 20 or 25 years. Notoriously difficult, 200 miles over 5 days. I think almost 70,000 vertical climbed. And it's all, the great thing, what was really appealing about it was that it is an unmarked trail. So you have to navigate through it. Mm-hmm. And reach the, make sure you hit the cutoffs. Now I thought, okay, now that's pretty cool. For one, it's in Wales, and we know that, but what that's going to be, I guess it'd be like, I asked a guy from the UK, say, "Hey, what's Wales like?" He says, "Well, it's just like Scotland. The weather bloody sucks."
Yeah, right.
But basically, we're going to travel the spine of Wales from north to south, the most mountainous regions. They give you the map with certain points along the way that you have a wristband, and you slip the marker into an electronic tracking thing, similar to modern orienteering events. And that's how you check in along the way, and they know that you hit the points and you're on course. So that was appealing. One, I'd never done anything in the UK. I hadn't even really traveled there. But going to Wales, and I had this William Wallace thing going on in my head.
Are you bringing blue face paint?
Bring home. So yeah, it was that was really appealing. So we'll be going there on May 20th, and the race starts, and it'll be 5 days, and there's a high dropout rate. People last 2 or 3 days. I think. They probably don't take the difficulty of it. And so along with the physical part, Yeah, hey, it's going to be tough. But the mental part of, finding your way, to me, it's like, okay, I have to go from here to Missoula
Mm-hmm.
without any roads. And I got to get there in 5 days. The map, compass.
What's the vegetation like? Because I'm always looking at Berkeley, and I'm thinking, I'm seeing the images from like the Tennessee State Park, and I'm trying to imagine here in Western Washington where we live, like almost every second forest feels like the rainforest, and I feel like you could never do a Berkeley event in Western Washington in the woods. So do you know what the kind of ground? Because there's like the Bob Graham round and some of those areas in England where you're running, or in Great Britain where you go more where there are no trees, right? And so as much as you have to navigate, and some of it is sketchy, and you certainly have to know how to get up or down one of those mountains. At least you don't have to deal with a whole bunch of like ground vegetation.
Yeah, it's a lot like Bob Graham round.
Okay. That makes moving then at least. Well, I mean, if you have visibility.
You could get into some of the tussock stuff and some of the, wet marshy areas. And then I guess there's some really, difficult scrambling, a couple very exposed areas. And it was interesting. My wife has a picture from when she was just out of college. She went backpacking over there, and she was on in Wales, a place called Cribgoch. And it was an exposed ridge, rather knife-like, similar maybe to Angel's Landing down in Zion, if you've been down there. But she had this picture of her backpack, and I go, wait, that looks familiar. And we looked at the Dragon's Back video, and they take us on the same ridge. And she goes, oh, yeah, I was up there in the fog with the 50-pound backpack, and I just thought it was a hike. There's a reason I married you.
Nice.
Awesome. So on this next run and on any of your long runs, you probably have a nutrition routine. Like, what do you eat the week before, the day before, the day of, and as you're doing these sorts of runs? Are you regimented about what you eat in your diet throughout the year, or do you kind of train yourself to get used to certain foods?
That's an interesting question. I like to, I got to steal the phrase from my friend Irv, 73-year-old guy that I train, flexitarian. I'm very flexible in my nutrition. I don't follow any specific regime. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a strictly carnivore. It is a lot of meat, poultry, fish, fresh veggies, fresh fruits, kind of typical fare. And I don't change, surprisingly, I don't change anything even a week before.
Okay.
Because, my training and, I go out on my long stuff or long days. I don't really change anything the night before. I eat like I always eat before that. So it doesn't change for a race event for me. I just keep, if I'm doing salmon on Thursdays, I'm still going to have salmon. And if I'm doing, the one thing I don't do is I don't really eat a ton of pasta. So, the thing about eating pasta before a big event, no, I'm not going to introduce that the night before. Common sense. Now, as far as during the event, I'm big on, and this is the thing, I think that we have so many options now that we never had before, and which is fantastic. We also have access to so much knowledge out there. And I think people should really, spend a little time knowing what goes in their body and what it's doing and why it's doing it. But for me, it was always about, what's going to go in my body, the composition of the food, the energy it will take to digest it, and how quickly can I use it. And so for me, that was liquid and gels.
Okay.
So I like to use Tailwind. I used Tailwind exclusively at Hard Rock one year. I went 100 miles on liquid.
Wow.
And no problems, and it was specifically designed for GI distress. And so at altitude, I still had my hydration and all that. And then I went to the opposite extremes. I did a 100-mile race in Illinois, right outside my hometown, completely flat. And, that wasn't too smart either. When you live in the mountains, then all you do is up and down. But in that particular race, I did 53 gels. And
wow.
I just, I didn't crap for a week.
But, yeah, that's a lot of that gelatin in there.
That's a lot of peach cobbler,
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Wow.
I found the Tailwind and V Fuel work pretty good for me, and not sponsored by either one, but I think keeping nutrition simple is. But it's interesting. Just crewing and volunteering and being at events, you'll see people come in, and some people, will be like, okay, I can only have something vegan. No offense. Hey, yeah, we probably got something for you. But like at 4:30 in the morning, the same person comes back through and he's like, look, I want that. And he's pointing at, a big quesadilla with cheese and sausage. And bacon. He's like, I want that now.
Yeah.
That actually leads me to kind of this follow-up a question that I have that we've talked about before. What's the strangest craving you've had while running or after finishing a long run? Some people just have really strange cravings, and I'm wondering, like, if you just been on a run and there's only one thing that can, satiate what you want. Have you experienced that?
I have, and it's I don't know if it's odd, but I wanted shrimp wrapped in bacon.
All right.
I rarely even pay for that. Did I really think I was going to get it at an aid station? Or but, I was like, oh, man, shrimp. I could kill for some shrimp wrapped in bacon. Yeah. I remember throwing in this little statistic out since I mentioned about the gels on a long run across the country that I did in 2010. I actually kept track of everything that I was doing during the day as far as nutrition. And on that particular run from Astoria, Oregon to Rockland, Maine, I consumed 423 Starbucks Mocca Frappuccinos.
That is amazing.
It's like, one, who the hell's going to drink one? And two, why count them?
Well, when you run really long distances, you've got lots of time on your hands, so that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, it's all about the data, right? That's what I keep saying. It's all about those weird numbers that you could throw out. That's a lot of, I think. Do you find that coffee is a good thing for you to be drinking while running? I have switched recently to tea and like heavy caffeinated teas and found that to be a little easier on the stomach. Does coffee just not affect you?
It depends on how much I've had. If I've had a few, it kind of, I feel I have to go to the bathroom a lot, which it'll cause that. I really like the bulletproof stuff, where I just have the black coffee and mix in some NCT oils and some ghee butter and that. I feel that keeps me going longer. I don't see anything wrong with when I do an ultra. I kind of abstain from it till later in the later stages, like 70, 80 miles. If you've got Oreo cookies and coffee. I'm golden. I remember last fall, it was September, I was up in Whistler for one of Gary Robbins' races, Whistler Alpine Meadows, and did the 100-kilometer up there, and it was by myself for like 22 hours. I mean, I thought I was probably the only one who signed up for the race.
Yeah, I was signed up and I missed out on it. Sigh. Crying bitter tears right now.
It was, it was interesting, but towards the end there was a younger guy kind of like breathing down my throat and behind me, and he wouldn't go around, and then he'd tail off me, come up. I'm like, really? We're going to get into a pissing match the last 10 miles over one, and And I didn't want to talk, but he wanted to talk. But make a long story short, I get to the aid station and I recognize two people I knew, and I look, and there's a pot of coffee and there's a bottle of Bailey's. So I said, Rochelle, look, I want half a cup of coffee and a half a cup of Bailey's. She's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And the next thing I know, I was finishing.
Yep.
That's the last I remember. I was at the finish line.
That's amazing. I like the Bailey's idea. I'm crewing an aid station, or we are, Doug and I, crewing an aid station in a couple of weeks.
Just you now. It's
well, yeah. I bought the wig already. Have you bought a wig yet?
I don't need one. I have glorious hair. I have a raccoon skin cap, so I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I guess then you're crewing an aid station too. Anyway, I'm planning on cooking baking at the aid station because I've been a couple times to aid stations where they were cooking fresh bacon, and you come, especially early March races, right? It's like grizzly out there, and you come around the corner as a runner, and the aid station offers bacon, even just the smell of bacon, which is like the absolute best. So that's what I'm going to be cooking.
One of the strangest things I ever had was, well, not strangest, it was I don't eat it too often, but at Kroger's Canteen at 13,200, it's the highest aid station on Hard Rock, just this little pass that you go through. I mean, it's like almost a saddle, but it's only as big as probably, I'm going to just say, your living room.
Yeah.
Just up and over. And I get up there, and it's like 4 a.m. It's dark, and this big tall guy walks over and he says, would you like some hot pierogies and some of our special sports drink? And I look and I'm like, is that Scott Jurek?
Nice.
Scott Jurek was standing there waiting on us. And I said, I would love to have some pierogies and some of that delicious sports drink, which was tequila and Red Bull. And the next thing I knew, I was in Telluride.
Yeah, right. That's fantastic.
And so I think we found the mystery of how to get through those last miles on ultras now.
I would say so. I've once had half a beer for the last 10K at my Squamish 50 miler, and it was glorious too. So I'm all there with those last few miles on an ultra where your nutrition needs completely change, right?
Yeah, I direct a race here that we're having. This will be our first year. We're part of the Skyrunner USA series up here in Sandpoint, and my co-director, he's like, so you're going to take care of all the aid stations, right? I'm like, yeah. Is anything in special that I need to know? I said, no, it's going to be bacon and alcohol. He's like, really? I said, coffee? And I said, yeah, coffee, and we'll have a little Bailey's, and that's going to be around mile, it's a 52K.
Okay.
I said, that'll be around like mile 27. We'll have coffee, Bailey's, and bacon available.
That's fantastic.
I'm gonna have to do the sky running one. I've been running the Rut down in Big Sky, Montana. Yeah. So yeah. So I'm gonna have to check that one out too.
Yeah, ours is Race the Wolf.
Okay.
Race the Wolf. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, after I did the Rut, I was like, North Idaho, we need something a little ballsy.
So what did you think of the Rut? Of the course itself?
I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I get to go up that. It's only a mile to the top of the Lone Peak, but I'm like gassed. And I remember my hands being in front of me, and I thought the Rut was really, it had a European flavor to it, because it did kind of remind me of days long ago in Germany. I just couldn't wrap my head around how, a guy like, I was there the year Killian did it, and I'm like at like mile 12, okay, and he's finishing it.
Yeah.
And I get done, and I'm probably like, so where's Killian? Oh, he's on his way home.
He's already on his flight back when you're at the finish. Yeah.
I thought the race was hard. I've done 50 milers faster than I've done the 50K. I think it's a hard race. I think, for the people, for the guys out there and the gals, like I'll give you an example. Like some good friends of mine, young, enthusiastic, will go to local races, and they'll clean up on everything. And I always say, if you want to see what you're really made of, you need to go to a small pond with big fish, see what happens. And I had numerous friends go to the rut, and just get pummeled. Yeah. Because you get some really strong freaking Montana people there. I mean, Livingston, Missoula, you guys,
Yeah, it's they're out in Bozeman. There's the Bridger run, and the people that run that. Like, I know a guy that won that race. He got in from a flight at 4 a.m., got to the trailhead to start the race at 6, and finished in with the record time, and he didn't even break a sweat. And I'm like, I don't understand how you guys can do this. This is insanity. Because the rut, I mean, that's why I'm kind of addicted to it, is because it's so challenging, and it's just, it gets me in these areas where I'm like, okay, if I can work through these problems on this course, then I feel good about myself. And the first year I trail ran, I did the 28K there, and I finished it, and I had no idea. I still to this day don't know how I did it, because it was, you still go up Lone Peak, you still go up all of that, and you're like, okay, I've never ran above 10,000 feet, let alone 11. So I'm trying to sell Matthias on this one. So.
Oh yeah, Matthias, if you haven't, and that's on the to-do list. It has to be on anyone's to-do list. That's a great one. Yep.
I'm signed up this summer to do Lavaredo in Italy. I'm very excited about that one.
Well, Matthias, you're only about a 6-pack away from signing up for the rut.
That is so true. I said I was never going to do that race again, and then I saw some friends signing up for it. I was like, fine, I'll do it.
I know, every picture I've seen always had overcast skies, and that's why the last year did Broken Arrow, because Broken Arrow, they had pictures with blue skies, and if I'm already on a trail, I want blue skies.
That's true.
I'm a little bit of a sunshine runner.
Yeah. Well, then here's a good question for you. What made you sign up for the Italy one?
Well, I'm hugely for obvious reason, I'm hugely fascinated with European races. For me, it's going home, right? It's there's a bigger challenge, and Doug and I often talk about this, where in Europe, the great races are in the greatest natural locations. And over here in the US, because of the limitations of public lands, we don't get the greatest races in the greatest locations, right? There is no, you can run rim to rim to rim, but there's no race there, right? There's no race in Yosemite, right? And so there is no race on the Wonderland Trail. You can run the Wonderland Trail yourself, but there's no race there, right? And so for me, I love the Alps. For me, the Alps are what makes, I enjoy, I'm not somebody who needs wilderness. I enjoy this idea of running from hut to hut, having villages in between and stuff. And so I'm fascinated with the European kind of racing history and culture. And I also don't mind races that have lots of people. I mean, that's why I did Broken Arrow. That's why I did Squamish. I don't need races that are those 35 people meeting at some trailhead in the middle of the woods somewhere. I mean, I don't mind those races, and I run them too, but I personally will navigate to be drawn to sort of those big races that have, sponsored booths and stuff. And then also a big lineup, right? I enjoyed running Broken Arrow this last year with Jason Schlarp and Max King was in town. I think when he ran the 26, and Francois, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He ran the vertical and stuff. And so I enjoy running in that kind of atmosphere, right?
what about like a long run? Like, how do you plan out your long ones, or what makes you choose where you want to go on one that's not an organized event?
Yeah, it's very true. This is actually a fantastic segue into one thing that we had sort of listed, and that is that. That's the thing. I'm very much a back of the pack runner. So if I run those big events, then I don't care about placing in any way. And I love to sort of come up with stories for myself where I feel like I know I'll never place a fastest known time anywhere, but I can come up with routes that are potentially only known times. So I can come up and look at our Olympic National Park that we have right outside here or over near, and I come up with a route that I think perhaps no one has ever run before. And then I stack it out and say, okay, boom, here are 20, 30 miles, combining, perhaps not even going really that far back, but combining multiple peaks, perhaps even parking the car in between or so. And I sort of love coming up with sort of those weird routes, if you will, right? I really enjoyed it. I can pore over maps and come up with something like that.
Yeah, we have the past few years, I think our list of things that we want to do that are completely unique just continues to grow, because every time we see a map, we're like, well, we could do this trail together. And then we look and like, no one's ever ran this before. This is surreal. Why don't we do this? And then it's, then we find 9,000 other things to do. And so
yeah.
Like
it's kind of the problem.
It's, somebody just posted on a Facebook group, and I'm a part of that. They were using a popular peak here in just east of Seattle, Mailbox Peak, and they were Everesting it. So I'm going up and down as many times as you needed in order to get to 29,000 feet of elevation. And, stories like that, right, where you can take an average hike, trail, peak, and find interesting ways either connecting with another one or running it multiple times. Those are the kind of stories that I enjoy for my kind of longer training runs, because I don't sign up for a race, every other month or every month. So I have a couple races a year, perhaps, where I'm signed up for. Do you do that for your training routines as well? So if you looking at your surrounding areas, do you kind of find different things that you feel like nobody has ever done before, or piece different routes together that feel unique in order to keep it fresh too?
Oh, exactly. Because, I think we do have to make it fresh. And, remember early in the conversation when I said like one-dimensional?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me anyways, I could have slipped into that one dimension of always just going to do trail races, signing up for 6, 7, 8, 10, but I didn't want to go that route. So hence, having these adventure runs, going up to last August, went up to Timberline Lodge and took the trail completely around Mount Hood.
Oh yeah,
nice.
I love that one. That's very much on my agenda. Yep.
It was awesome. Like a friend had a friend who had done it, and it was just like, hey, let's just go camp. We'll get up at 6:30, go do it. We'll be back that night. And I was like, right on. I mean, and any other time, we'd have to backpack 3 days or whatever to see it. And we get to see it in one day, and that's a great thing about the bodies that we have and the minds that we have. We look down at our legs and say, man, look where you brought me. And and I think sometimes, we got to remember to be thankful for that.
For sure.
It was back in, I think it was about 7, 8 years ago. And I had done this cross country run, and I was kind of like all out of sorts. And and I know maybe you guys have experienced it, where you do an event or a run and then you get done and you're kind of like, you've got these postpartum blues.
Yes.
Like, oh, man, what now? And I had finished this cross country run, and I'm standing in Hope, and I'm looking out the living room window for like 4 straight months. A total like, depression going on. And I told my wife, I said, I think I want to go to Spain. She's like, of course you do. What now? And I said, no, they got this thing called the Camino before the Camino actually like really took off with the movie that came out about it. And I said, it's this route in Spain, where I can go from, the border with France. I can run across to the cathedral and Tomb of St. James, and I got to follow these little things. And she says, is it the Amazing Race? Don't you have to have a partner? No. I'm like, no, you got a guidebook and just follow the guidebook. And so that's when I went over to Spain, and it was about 500 miles, but I was in no hurry and traveled super light, and it gave me great clarity on how big the world is and how old the world is. The old churches and the communities in Spain, and and life is simple. You just get up, you eat, you run, you go to bed, you get up, you eat, you run, and something to be said for some simplicity. But the Spain thing was awesome.
Yeah, my sister-in-law is planning on hiking it this spring.
I love it.
Yeah, she is very much looking forward to it. I don't think she's going to do the whole 500, so I don't know which portion she's doing, but she's very much looking forward.
Yeah, it's on the Camino over there. It's like it'd be like 10 fingers, all ending where you're at, and so there's different Caminos of different lengths.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I would love to go back and do different ones, a little more remote, a little more primitive. But when you're walking or even running down these roads that Charlemagne and the Romans had been on, it's kind of humbling that they're still there.
That's the feeling that I had. I was just in October back visiting my family, and I was running through just a normal forest outside of my town where I grew up all my life, and I felt that way too, looking at the trail markers and looking at the trails and sort of feeling that history that is on those roads. It's a very, very different experience. In Europe, you don't get wilderness. You don't get that raw, seemingly untouched beauty of places that have almost always been wild. But you get that history that gives you a complete different perspective. You pass castles and stuff, and you're like, oh, wow. People have been walking these trails for hundreds, if not thousands of years. This is crazy. Well, Mike, thank you so much for this incredible story. It's taken us very much into routes that we didn't really plan for, and it was great getting to know you a little bit and getting to know your story. How do people follow up with you? Do you have something to plug? Where do you want to send people if they want to reach out to you or learn a little bit more about you?
Well, I have a website, Mike Runs Idaho, and that's also my Instagram account. And you can reach me through there. It tells a little bit about who I am and what I do. Also, outside of the running, coach a lot of runners from 5K to 100 miles and beyond. But I also just love talking to people, and learning from them and also sharing knowledge. But MikeRunsIdaho.com and Mike Runs Idaho on Instagram.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely have the links to this in the show notes so people can follow up with you there and reach out. So you're doing Hard Rock again. I'm still fascinated with Hard Rock. The Hard Rock is for me one of those races that I haven't wrapped my head around it.
There's I was part of a documentary film that is out now on Amazon Prime. It's called The Human Race.
Okay.
And it's about that we're never too old to start and never too old that we have to stop running. And they profiled or followed 6 of us. So it's 6 runners, 6 races, all over the age of 50.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I was like one of the 50-year-olds, and they followed me as I prepared for Hard Rock, and then they were down on the course when I did Hard Rock. So it's kind of neat seeing this slow deterioration of yourself on course. You know, and you really don't. Hey, wait! I thought I looked better than that. You know? Holy cow! But
makeup.
Yeah. And, but I remember they were from California, and they came up, and they were just one, the altitude got to them a little bit, but they were just like overwhelmed with the family atmosphere of Hard Rock, but the scenery up there, and it's a great, if you get a chance to see it on Amazon Prime. But not only my story, but the other 5 people. It's amazing story on aging and running.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I was fortunate enough. I just got to run a half with my grandfather, who has been running. I think he started running in his 50s, and now he's in his 80s, and so he's been running nonstop. And it's kind of been amazing to see like how his outlook on life and everything has changed now that he's been more active and just been, putting in miles and experiencing more things. And it's just so inspiring to be able to talk to you about this and to hear like, I ran in high school, I ran in college, and then I took a break in my 20s and said, I don't want to run again. I'm burnt out from this. And then I've just started over the last 2 or 3 years to get really back into it. And it's really just inspiring for me and hopefully our listeners just to be like, you know what, there is no time where you have to do it now. You can pick this up at any time. You have the ability to be able to go out at almost any age to do this. And that's what the fun about trail running is. It's not necessarily about racing. It's about, like you said, it's the adventure run. It's the getting out and saying, look at where my legs could take me. And it's, and being able to talk to you today has just been able to inspire me to be like, okay, I can manage a few things. So I highly recommend everybody check you out online, Dan, and reach out to you. I think you have lobbied very well to become the new co-host of this. So I'm a little worried, but I appreciate you taking the time here. So.
This is an ongoing joke, Mike. No worries here.
Yeah. You probably, if either one of you ever do 100-miler, hey, give me a call. I love to crew and pace. I love doing that. My good friend Irv, who's 73 years old, he was the oldest finisher at Leadville 2 years ago, and he lives here in Hope, and we're not related. Most of the 75 people are. But I do remember at Leadville, and this is and I'll make it a quick story for you. And he hit the halfway point in Winfield with 10 minutes to go, cut off.
Oh man, okay.
What's the chances in hell that you're going to stay ahead of that on the way back?
Yeah.
So he gets to Twin Lakes, and he's like within 2 minutes. So he comes in, and I'm going to pick him up. He comes in, I'm like, okay, dude, look, you just keep going. Just go right through. Give me your pack. He and I personally didn't believe in muling, carrying that. But for the sake of just refilling his bottles, I took his pack, and I said, I'll catch up and get it back to you. He got out of there with like seconds to spare. Mm-hmm. Now, what's the chances? He's got 35 miles left, and he's going to do it. But anyways, I pick him up, get him to the next aid station, and we've actually made up time. He's about 10 minutes up. And then we get to Fish Hatchery. He's about 12 minutes up. Now we got to get to May Queen in the dark, downhill. And he had dropped out the year before, and I knew what the cutoff was, or so I thought. It was 6. And I'm looking at my watch, and we're going down there. And finally I just stopped looking and said, Irv, look, man, we need to kick it in the ass right now. Mm-hmm. You lost. You didn't lose, but Leadville took your buckle last year. The mofo is not taking your buckle this year. We got to go now. If you fall, you get your ass up. We got to go. We got to get to that last cutoff. He's like, whatever, let's go. He's like, yo, Adrian. He's like, Rocky. He's like, let's go. And I hear him fall, and he gets up, and we're running like hell. And he gets up, and he gets up. And, poor me, I'm beating the hell out of this 72-year-old guy. And we're passing people, and we're getting down, and we get to May Queen, and we come in, and his son's there. He's like, yeah, Dad, come on. And I said, Irv, keep going. Just go right through. And I'm looking at my watch. It's like 2 minutes to 6. So he runs right past his son. He's got 13 miles left. And his son looks at me and goes, well, what's he in a hurry for? I said, we had to get here. The cutoff was at 6. He goes, no, it's 6:30. So Doug, yes, beware. If they're pacing you and we're really pushing it, you might want to make sure I really know what the aid station cutoff is. But long story short, he pushed it hard. He had the leans. He was leaning a little bit to one side. But, we could see him coming down the street there, and he finished with 20 minutes to spare, was the oldest finisher. And I posted a video of him finishing, and within 12 hours, there was 2,500 shares.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was like, man, I want to be like him. So, awesome. For people who are older that, I don't think life is measured by how many marathons or ultras or, whatever we do. I think the more we do, the more we can do. And if doing something means just getting out every day for a walk on a trail, or even if it's a little jog, or even if it's a little more, the more we're going to be able to do, no matter how old we are.
Love it. Absolutely love that.
That's a fantastic way of ending this episode of Single Track, I would say. Motivational and inspirational. Mike, thank you so much for joining us in this week's episode. Again, for our listeners, there are links in the show notes to connect and get to know Mike a little bit more. There's some cool videos on his website too, to hear about some of the stories and some of the runs and projects he's completed. So thanks again, Mike.
We just touched the tip of the iceberg of what you've done. So definitely dive in. Yeah, check out his website. And for me, especially, and Matthias, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for this and to be a guest on the podcast. This has been a lot of fun. And like I said, I think we all could probably talk for hours on end. So if we do Skype with you later, sorry.
Yeah. Hey guys, I hope we cross paths. Doug, hey, race level I-6. Yes. I'll be over in your area sometime, I know. But yeah, hopefully we cross paths and we can spend some time in the dirt together.
Absolutely. Love it. Yeah.